So, you're running a business in New Zealand. That means sooner or later, you're going to have to face the music, your GST return. For a lot of people, it just feels like this huge chore, right? All these confusing numbers and deadlines always breathing down your neck. But what if it could actually be simple? Well, over the next few minutes, that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to break the whole thing down, step by step, and take all the stress out of it for you. And hey, if you're feeling a bit lost in a sea of GST paperwork, you are definitely not alone. I think that first GST return especially can feel like you're trying to solve some impossible maze full of jargon and numbers. It's a super common headache. But here is the good news. It really doesn't have to be that complicated. The whole process, when you look at it, really just breaks down into a few clear, totally manageable steps. We're going to walk through them together so you can file your next return feeling completely in control. Okay, let's get into it. We've got a really simple 5-step journey mapped out. We'll kick things off with the absolute basics, then get into the nitty-gritty of the calculations. After that, we'll cover how you actually file the thing, explain what happens with payments and refunds, and then wrap it all up with a super simple checklist to keep you on the straight and narrow. Sound good? Let's go. All right, first things first. Before we even think about touching a calculator, there is one golden rule of being GST registered that you absolutely have to know. It's the foundation for everything else. This right here is probably the most important rule to burn into your brain. Even if you had 0 sales, 0 expenses, nothing happened in that period, you still have to file. It's called a nil return, and it's basically you just telling the Inland Revenue, hey, I'm still here, still in business, just had a quiet couple of months. Filing is non-negotiable every single time. Okay, with that rule firmly in place, let's get our hands dirty with the practical stuff. Before you can file anything, you've got to gather the right numbers. Honestly, this part is the real heart of your GST return. Your entire GST calculation really just boils down to these 5 key things. You've got your total sales and income. That's pretty straightforward. Then you have things like 0 rated supplies, think exports, which have 0% GST. On the other side of the coin, you've got all your total purchases and expenses. And finally, you have debit and credit adjustments, which are just for fixing things, like a bad debt you have to write off or accounting for personal use of a business car. Now, a really crucial piece of the puzzle is knowing when to count all those figures. And that all comes down to what's called your accounting basis. It's a choice you make when you first register for GST, and it determines the timing of pretty much everything. So, what's the difference? Well, it's all about timing. If you're on the invoice basis, you count a sale the second you send out the invoice, and you count an expense the second you receive a bill. It doesn't matter if any money has actually moved yet. But if you're on the payments basis, life is a lot simpler. You only count the money that has literally come into or gone out of your bank account during that period. Let's make this super real with a quick example. So imagine Heinz sells a pair of headphones for $100 before GST. To figure out the GST, she just multiplies that $100 by 15%, which is $15. She adds that to her price, so the final cost for the customer is $115. Simple as that. Okay, now let's flip it around. A customer, let's call him Arthur, buys those headphones for $115, and for his own business records, he needs to know how much of that was GST. Well, in New Zealand, the magic formula is you take the total price, $115, multiply it by 3, and then divide the whole thing by 23. And boom, that gives him exactly $15. That's the he could then claim back. Right, you've wrestled with the numbers. You've done all your calculations. Now for the next big step. Actually filing the return. And let me tell you, when it comes to filing, the deadlines are absolutely critical. Okay, the standard rule is pretty easy to remember. Your return is due on the 28th of the month right after your GST period ends. But, and this is a big but, watch out for 2 key exceptions that trip people up all the time. To account for holidays, the March return is actually due May 7th, and the November return gets pushed out to January 15th. You're definitely going to want to get those dates circled in your calendar. So, how do you actually file? You've got 3 main ways. The fastest and most popular way is through your MyIR account online. You get instant confirmation. It's great. If you use accounting software like Xero or MIOB, you can often just file directly from there, which is a huge time saver. And finally, if you don't have a MyIR account, you'll be sent a paper return in the mail. So, you've hit that submit button. Now what? Well, one of 2 things is going to happen. You'll either owe some GST or you'll be getting a nice little GST refund. Let's quickly look at both of those scenarios.
This is a really simple but vital point. Your filing deadline is also your payment deadline. They are the exact same day. So if you owe GST, you have to make sure that payment is made on or before that date to avoid any late fees or penalties.
Now, on the flip side, the fun side, if you're owed a refund, the IRD's standard processing time is about 15 working days. The money gets paid directly into whatever bank account you've registered with them, so it's always a good idea to just log in and double check that your details are up to date. But what if your refund doesn't show up? Well, there are a few common reasons this might happen. The IRD could use it to pay off other tax you might owe, or they might hold on to it if you have an older, overdue return from a past period. Or they might just need a little more info to verify your figures, and if that's the case, they'll get in touch with you.
Phew, we have covered a lot of ground. So let's bring it all home and boil it down into a final, simple checklist that basically summarizes your most important responsibilities. You know, when you really think about it, it all comes down to this simple rhythm. First, calculate your numbers correctly based on your accounting method. Second, file your return on time. No excuses. And third, if you owe money, pay it on time. If you can just master that calculate, file, pay cycle, you'll always be on top of your GST. And that just about wraps it up. We've hopefully demystified this whole process. But now the ball is in your court. As you look at how you do things, just think about this. What is one small thing you can do to make this even easier next time around? Maybe it's just setting up a simple calendar reminder for those due dates, or maybe it's exploring how your accounting software can do some of the heavy lifting for you. Taking one small step today can save you a whole lot of stress tomorrow. Thanks for tuning in.